All right, so hey guys, this is gonna be the first series of the podcast. It's gonna be our first one, so excuse any stuttering or anything. So the podcast, it's called Blizer, our podcast, and we're gonna be talking to OGs in the field. It could be the NFT space or the crypto space. And today we're gonna be talking to Moxsly, and he's an OG in the CryptoPunk space. And he's going to we're going to ask him questions. We're going to pretend we don't know anything about CryptoPunks, and he's going to answer our questions. So Moxley, how are you, man?
Hey, doing all right. I've got my coffee, so I can't complain. How about yourselves?
We're doing great, man. We're doing
Let me
great.
throw in a first question here. So, just wanted to maybe find out a little bit more about you, obviously within the confines of anonymity. If you can give us maybe some background, how did you get into the crypto space and CryptoPunks?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've worked in kind of the IT and ultimately security field for over 10 years now. And I first got exposed to, cryptocurrencies in general with, Bitcoin back in, I want to say 2012, 2013, when I got my first Bitcoin at DEF CON, actually.
Okay, yeah.
And, they're selling like physical coins. And I remember there's a guy like wandering around with a briefcase that was basically a portable Bitcoin ATM. Like he'd slot in, $100 bills and it would spit out a receipt with a QR code for your wallet. But, that was definitely early days. And I didn't hold on to any of those Bitcoins long enough. I think I sold it at $200 because I needed to pay some bills.
Yeah.
So it really just kind of dabbled with things until Ethereum came along. And then late 2016, my cat had died. My, romantic partner and I were done. My lease, my rental lease was up. And I kind of decided, if I had never traveled, then, now is the time to do it, so I better do it now. So I sold a bunch of things and I invested half my savings, a little more into Ethereum, which was I think right around $37, $39 at the time. Wow. And then got packed up to go. And then I visited some family in Alaska before I kind of took off. After the Alaska trip, I'd come back to visit my folks and was staying there for just a couple of weeks before I left for Sri Lanka. And that's when I came across the Mashable article about CryptoPunks. And it sounded awesome. And, I had been learning about smart contracts and how to interact with them and how they worked and all that good stuff. So I kind of spent an afternoon kind of exploring that project and how their smart contract work and then claiming punks. And I think the first punk I claimed when I remember was 2077 because, the Cyberpunk 2077 had just been announced. And then...
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, just,
That's freaking awesome.
On the tip of my mind.
If you don't mind me asking, I guess you said that you believed right off the bat in the Ethereum project. What kind of were the green flags for you to invest? You said half of your, I guess, net worth at that time. What made you believe in the project more than anything else?
It was, it aimed to be kind of this general computing network of value, a world computer, distributed world computer. And I saw a lot of value in that, this network of programmable money, effectively. And it was completely novel. And I saw more and more big companies and international organizations and groups getting involved and kind of putting it in their, in their kind of their think tanks and in their, their test programs, Microsoft, announced that they're getting interested in, some of the big, the big financial firms were starting to explore it. And it's kind of okay, this is something that, people are starting to use and really investigate. And, with the network effect of things, as more people use it and build on it, it becomes more valuable. So it just made sense to me.
Yeah, that, I guess I agree with all of that. I regret not, investigating a little bit further myself. But in hindsight,
I guess it's the media, right? It's the media. Yeah. They automatically assume it's a scam or whatever, and it turns people off right away.
Yeah. But what about
especially if they don't people don't know
No, go
what
ahead.
questions to ask, or how to ask the right questions about what it is and explore it. You don't know what you don't know, so you don't know what to ask, kind of problem.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like depending on the field that you're in, it's a little bit more accessible, than for some other people. But so CryptoPunks in general, I guess I actually don't know the answer to this question. Like, was that one of the first projects like that implemented NFTs? Why is it that popular? Like, why is it perceived as like, the OG art on Ethereum?
Yeah, I mean, there's some, of course, debate over this, but this is also back in a time when NFTs weren't a thing. It was these projects. There wasn't this kind of encapsulating term for it, and I know there's been a couple of variations, and people argue about rare pepes and color coins, and some of the other earlier projects. But I guess CryptoPunks was the first one that really pushed the envelope. It looked in terms of trying to like really put like art on the blockchain in this tradable way where you had these discrete tokens, and as we learned as that whole space evolved, that smart contract for CryptoPunks became kind of the inspiration for the standard, for the 721 standard.
Sorry,
It was
what's the
just, I mean,
standard? Not familiar with that.
it's a token, just a token standard for how to structure a smart contract that has certain functions in it that you can reliably expect to be there, so that you can trade those tokens on OpenSea, for example, and OpenSea knows that that token has these features and these abilities, so it can list traits and interact with the contract that manages that token in various ways in an expected way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, but I guess you mentioned that you initially invested in the like 2077 punk. Like, did you think like more of the project, or you were just thinking, it's like pretty cool art, like, or did you read into the tech as well and kind of, saw it as a maybe pivoting point like in the space?
Yeah, I mean, both really. I mean, when I'd read the Mashable article, it talked about it being the first art on the blockchain, which debatably isn't quite the most accurate. Maybe it's some of the first art on the Ethereum blockchain. There's other early projects that kind of approach being art or just maybe collectibles, but it it just had a novelty, and it's immediately appealing when you see these like various character punks. Each one has their own kind of look and feel, and generates its own kind of interests, and you kind of wonder about its story and all these things. And yeah, and they weren't purchased. Just to clarify, like back when it launched, it was they were claimed. Anybody could just pay the gas fee in order to interact with the smart contract.
It was a fair
and
launch.
just lay claim. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of under the radar, at least for the first little while, but yeah, it was quite fair.
And were there any in particular that you immediately went for, like you wanted to collect more of? Were there like zombies, aliens, cowboy hats?
Yeah.
It was?
So I mean, after just kind of buying or claiming the 2077, just as kind of like an experiment to see, like, does this work? Did I do it? How does it work? Once that kind of rolled forward, then I remembered reading, on their GitHub page, they talked about like, we have all these various types of punks and 88 zombies, 24 apes, 9 aliens, and exactly 1 alien with a smoking pipe and a hat. And so I was like, I want to go find that one. And so I back at this time when they launched, they had this huge like PNG file with all the punks on it. So you had to like kind of manually like scroll through this thing to find any punk you're interested in. And so I took a little while and finally found him, 7804, and claimed him. And sure enough, it was still available.
Wow.
So once that went through, I started sifting through and finding all the other aliens, and then managed to claim 7 of the 9 of the aliens, and then 8 of the apes out of 24 of them. and at that point, I kind of was like, I felt like I was getting a little greedy. I'm like, this is a new project. I've already snapped up all these like, really rare ones. We have to let others take a crack at it. So I ended up just kind of grabbing like a handful more of some that look interesting, like some tiaras and some like a hoodie and a couple cool numbers that seemed interesting to me, like 3141 and 2600 for the hacker in me who loves the 2600 quarterly. And then yeah, just after kind of laying claim to, I don't know, it was maybe 15 or so, a little more than that. I just kind of like called it good, and then like 2 days later or so, they were all claimed.
And were you getting bids on the aliens and the apes at that time, or nothing was, or no one were bidding on them?
Well, initially, I don't remember if I think I did get a couple of bids early on. I'd have to go back, look at the transactions. But I ended up talking with another big OG in the space, kind of directly, who wanted to buy an alien. And so we just kind of like talked back and forth, and I agreed to sell him one. And that's the point at which we kind of, LarvaLabs announced that there was this flaw with the contract, where if you sold a punk, then the buyer got both the punk and the money, like the ETH didn't go to the seller.
Okay.
And so that's the point at which they had to migrate the contract. I think if I remember correctly, like they launched it originally, like I want to say it's June 13th, and then I think they relaunched it with the second contract on the 22nd, June 22nd. So there's like 10 days where things were a little
just so we get a reference
unbaked.
For myself, and I guess those who are listening, what were like gas fees like at that point in time? Like, I'm curious on a per punk basis, if you remember.
It wasn't very much. I think it was like 50 cents.
Wow.
US dollar wise, something like that. It wasn't very much. It was maybe a little more than that in a couple areas. But yeah, not a lot.
And when you sold your first alien, how much did you sell it for?
I think it was 8 ETH, which at the time was a ton, especially for these like silly little
I imagine
things in this like this underground project called CryptoPunks. That was a metric fuck ton. It was quite a win. Or so I felt, as we've seen how things have progressed, it's maybe would have been better to hold on a little longer. But as I kind of mentioned to others, it's like, if I had held on to them, then it's like, that whole like domain of punks, that whole like feature set almost entirely is, exclusive to me being the holder, and hoarding them. And that doesn't really generate a lot of excitement.
Exactly.
So, it's, and I was certainly happy at the time, so I can't complain looking back.
Well, you ended up with 8 Ethereum, and if it ends up at 100,000 one day, you're laughing.
Right.
And are you drawn to any punk that you would never sell? Like, do you have any that it's like, even if somebody offered you $1 million, you wouldn't sell it for?
Well, I mean, I'm never going to be punkless, that's for sure.
Okay.
I'd like to always have a 3D. Like I've got one now that's just kind of like, he's got kind of the widow's peak thing going on, and 3D glasses. Yeah. And I wouldn't mind maybe switching him around for a different 3D at some point. But yeah, I kind of always want to have at least a 3D of some sort, because I think those are pretty quintessential to punks. And I've got this ape left that I had found in a forgotten wallet, thankfully, just a few months back. And while I would love to not sell him, it's kind of like probably my last kind of real shot at trying to lock in something solid.
So that'd be life-changing money if you do sell it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I think the history of punks is really still getting going, as we're starting to see a lot of other kind of OGs in the field, doing some really interesting things with their punks in terms of like branding. And I saw like G Money had a
the billboards,
deep fake voice
yes.
and animation he added to his ape. And so I think we're going to see some like Max Headroom type personalities, and we've got, spotty Wi-Fi doing raps, and I think we're going to see more and more branding, and even corporations maybe buying punks to use as some sort of like mascot sort of thing, depending on the licensing. I'm not sure how LarvaLabs feels about that, but
Oh, it's definitely starting to take off, man. You see all these celebrities trying to get punks. It's just like the start, I think, man. It's good. It's good. There are only 10,000 of them, and and then there's so many millionaires in the world. It's crazy, man.
Or 9,997 now, since I think 3 have been burned, and there's
exactly OBX one.
Yeah, and there's several more like
burned?
They're sent by accident to an incorrect address, which nobody has the key for.
Oh, okay.
So they're effectively lost forever.
Huh. And there's no way to recover at all? And I mean, that could happen not only with NFTs, right? Anything on the blockchain in theory.
Yeah, any token, any NFT, any resource like that you can send to another address.
I wanted to come back to a technical point. I guess, once again, like I was saying, I'm fairly new to the crypto space. So the gas fee, right? So it has been steadily increasing. I wanted to maybe get your thoughts on, well, first of all, I guess maybe a definition of how it actually works, but then, like, do you think it's gonna be solved at all by, they're releasing ETH 2.0? And so is that being solved at all in the technology? I don't know if you have an opinion or thought on that.
I think it's going to be one of those like wait and see things, because there's because there's game theory in theory, and then there's game theory in practice, and right. How it actually is going to play out in terms of how the gas fees are balanced. That's going to be one of those kind of wait and see, how the miners, how the users, how they all respond to it.
Gotcha.
But I am hopeful. I mean, and if that's not the solution, then we have like, L2 solutions and other side chains, and, there's a way forward.
Definitely.
It's kind of an inevitable thing. It's just a matter of like, what pressures it will take in order for like, that way forward to be found and to move along that path.
There's a lot of talk about like the punks, like the images themselves aren't stored on chain, and they're stored off chain. And do you think that's a problem later on for CryptoPunks, or it's just a minor issue?
No, I don't think it's really an issue, because they've stored the hash, and the hash is effectively like a signature for the file of the punks. So you can always verify like this is the de facto file, 1-to-1, because that the hash matches, and I don't think we're going to get any sort of hash collisions on SHA-256 anytime soon. And I mean, you can also, by extension, also say like the PNG for the punks is also stored on IPFS, which granted itself like just the metadata is stored on chain, not the actual files. But again, there's redundancy built in there. And if somebody really wants to, they could spend a few ETH and encode the file and lock it in there and just say, okay, look, there it is. If we really need it, there. But it's kind of redundant at this point.
Wow, so it's a non-issue, basically.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think that's exactly what the LarvaLabs, the conclusion they came to eventually as well, because they spent all this time making these 8-bit graphics, because they wanted to reduce the complexity of this image they needed to store on chain, and ultimately they decided like it really wasn't needed, just the hash, which is part of the reason why we have 8-bit pixels, I think, or 8-bit characters is kind of that initial part of the evolution of the story of them trying to approach a way to put it on chain, and then deciding, oh, it's not really needed.
Interesting. And what's really cool? It's a whole Christie's auction coming up, man. I find that really interesting. It's really gonna bring CryptoPunks to the world, especially to the art world. And what do you think? Like, how do you think this affects CryptoPunks in the future? How do you think people are gonna see them? Are they gonna see them more as a special crypto? Like it's like the first crypto art on Ethereum. More people are going to want to buy it. What do you think is going to happen from this?
Well, I certainly think it's going to be a boon for CryptoPunks in general. Any attention tends to be good attention, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of controversy and discussion over this, just like there was with the DeepL. And NFTs in general, really, there's a lot of back and forth from people who love it or hate it, or criticize it or exalt it. And I think that's just going to like fuel that fire of discussion more, which in turn will just get more attention and interest on CryptoPunks in general, and especially bring in kind of the classic art collectors, and people who wouldn't necessarily have known about it or sought it out, but now seeing how it's NFTs in general, but also CryptoPunks specifically, are sort of evoking this sort of like cultural moment. That's something that brings a lot of attention. And yeah, I think it's going to be quite an interesting day when, the day of the auction, May 13th, I think. And yeah, I think a lot of people will be surprised at, I don't know, I'm expecting it to sell for quite a bit. Probably more than, what we saw 7804 sell for.
Definitely.
Which is 4,200 ETH, which today is worth almost 10 million, a little under 10 million US dollars. So I'm expecting it to exceed, that valuation at least.
And you know what? I find, and I think the price of floor punks, they're going to increase like crazy after this, for sure. Like everyone's going to want a punk after this.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of newcomers, probably on the ramp up, and then during, like, I'm not sure how long the auction itself, will last, but if it lasts for more than a day, I'm sure that'll bring more interest as well.
When does the auction take place? Sorry, I guess we'll post links also to those who are curious or maybe want more information as well.
I believe it's May 13th.
May 13th. Okay.
And do you think there's a difference between buying wrapped punks versus punks on the LarvaLabs website? Because a lot of people ask me that question, because they're unsure whether to buy it on OpenSea or just go to or just go on LarvaLabs. Yeah,
so the wrapped punks are just since punks, CryptoPunks were created before the ERC 721 token standard. They're effectively a modified ERC 20 token. That then inspired the ERC 721, but they themselves are not ERC 721. And so in order to be compatible with a lot of these trading platforms like OpenSea, you need to wrap it in this ERC 721 wrapper. And that's effectively all it is you're wrapping it in this kind of shell of a more modern token so that it can be traded on modern platforms.
So again, it's a non-issue. You could either buy a wrapped one and unwrap it if you feel like it, or just leave it wrapped.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just a means to an end to move it around.
Okay. And do you see any punk related revenues developing from this? So you can basically rent out your punk to someone, the same as 4156 just did. He rented out his ape. Do you think a lot of that's going to start happening more and more?
Oh yeah, there's already a rental platform.
Is there?
I can go find the link and send it to you a little later. But effectively what they do is they, if you want to rent your punk, you essentially encode in hex, kind of like your rental terms for like pricing and duration and all that sort of thing in the for sale price of the punk. So the number of ETH to buy this punk will be like, insanely high. Nobody's going to buy it. But you can use that information to encode, the messaging of rental terms. And that's effectively what they're doing.
It's super cool, man. It's like renting land, basically. It's amazing.
I can see it being useful for like big events or, I mean, if you're launching some sort of event on social media or like wanting to start something with a splash, I could see people doing it. But yeah, it's a good question. Or if you want to have an alien, but you don't want to shell out, 4,200 ETH, you can maybe you can rent it from somebody who's willing for a year or whatever.
Plus, that would open up, I feel like, some kind of a 3D or virtual gallery space too, right? You would have all kinds of like owners and then some kind of a venue or maybe like a virtual museum would pay. Yeah, and like they would essentially rent the art, right, to present it and then give it back to the owners because they don't need to hold it in a way.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's definitely another approach. Just kind of rent NFTs in general. Um,
What are, I guess, as someone who's trying to enter the space, right, and probably missed out on this wave, it seems that it's very difficult to purchase a punk, even if you had the funds, right? What would you recommend? Are there any like other cool projects to get into that are still maybe not as big, but still like fairly interesting in the space?
yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, LarvaLabs does have a Project 3 in the pipeline. When it comes out, who knows? But they are working on something else. So
Mhm.
if they follow suit with their previous projects, then hopefully it won't really require purchasing whatever it is they make. You can just lay claim to them. So we'll see if that's the case again. But that's something I would definitely keep an eye out for. But then there's also Art Blocks, which is headed by Snowfro, who's another OG.
Mhm.
And he and his team have done some amazing work in putting together that platform of generative art and bringing a bunch of very world-class talent together to curate a lot of these controlled releases of generative art. There's one this Friday, in fact, like 12 p.m. Central, I believe.
Sorry,
But
what is that? What's happening on Friday?
There's a drop on art blocks.
Okay.
Yeah, curated drop. It looks pretty interesting. It's kind of like sort of generated terrain wireframe thing. Looks pretty cool.
Honestly, like everything being released on art blocks, they're so addictive. You just want to collect everything. It's
Yeah,
just so hard to
yeah.
get the Ethereum, but it's amazing, man.
Yeah, they're dangerous.
They're
And
very
they tend to have
dangerous.
like they tend to have a pretty fair entry point too. It's like usually like 0.1 or 0.15 ETH. And so, I'd say like that would be a good way of working up to punks is like, you can try your luck there and try, purchasing some of the curated or minting some of the curated works upon release and minting some of the playground and the factory stuff because there's some pretty awesome stuff there too. And then, if you get some particularly rare stuff, you can try selling it for, a handful of ETH and work your way up to a punk. That would definitely be a good approach. Or mint your own, like, if you're an artist yourself, take a crack at making something interesting and put it up there. See
I don't know if I've got that touch, but
Soon.
I mean, I really like the computer generated graphics. Like some of these images are really quite cool, especially I guess I did browse through art blocks quite a bit and like the 720 minutes collection. I don't know why, but that one is really
Epic.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's the watches. I don't know if you know that by reference, but
managed to pick up one of those. Yeah, they're conceptually really, really quite interesting. And I loved how immediately people were putting them on some of their smartwatches as the clock face.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know you could do that, but I guess it's JavaScript, so it can probably run, like you said, on a smartwatch. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, functional art.
And Moxley, there are a couple of punks that are in sleeper accounts. Do you think it's worthwhile for someone putting low bids on these accounts, or it's just to forget about it? It's never going to happen.
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, some of these accounts that are sleepers, their owners are still around and very much aware. They're just not interacting with that wallet. It doesn't hurt, other than the gas, of course. So yeah, I think that's a decision everybody needs to make. There's also, maybe a moral or ethical quandary of like, if you put like a really low bid on an account that's been asleep and they wake up and they see they have like 5 ETH sitting on a bid and they buy it, like, I don't know, personally I'd feel a little guilty if I bought a punk from somebody for 5 ETH right now. So that's another bridge to cross. But if you put something fair, I'd say go for it.
I'm so thankful. That's exactly what I did in January. I discovered CryptoPunks and somebody sold me one for 555 Ethereum. At the time, I thought it was a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
But right now, I'm blessed, I think, man. Because after that, it got too expensive, man.
Yeah, it's been really nuts these past few months.
Yeah, it's amazing to see though, like how much it just boomed all of a sudden. Like within a month, it just shot up. It was insane.
Yeah, the past I think 3, 4 months have had quite a bit of activity, like 6, 8 times more like sales than previous months.
Amazing. And Moxie, we're going to be finishing up soon. I just ask you a couple last questions. Do you think there's going to be a bear market for punks? And if there is, how low do you think they go to?
I mean, I think that it's going to be inevitable that there's going to be a dip. I mean, there has to be, it can't just go up.
For sure.
But, the question is for how long, will it just be like a minor dip and then a plateau while everyone kind of like waits for the recovery phase? And also I think, any sort of dip that happens will be in terms of ETH valuation, not like USD or Euro or anything else. Like, punks tend to be priced in ETH. And that's one of the reasons why they're so expensive now is, they only move in terms of ETH.
And do you think that'll ever change, that people are going to value them more in dollars more so than ETH? Or do you think there's always going to be a parity between them?
I mean, I guess they kind of already do, but I think the main parity is always going to be ETH or anything else that gets, it ultimately gets attached and wrapped up to. Like if, ETH blossoms into something else, whatever that token would be, whatever the network it is you need in order to get a punk, that's how it's going to go. That's where the value is going to lie.
For sure. And price prediction for punks, man. How do you think, how much do you think they're worth in 5 or 10 years? And do you think they're ever going to reach $1 million for floor punks?
Man, 5 to 10 years, that's really hard to say. I would just be basically just, spinning a wheel and
exactly,
and
gambling basically.
Yeah. But I mean, floor punks being worth $1 million, I suppose it's not unachievable. I mean, I think there have to be like, Ethereum will have to go up quite a bit in value, as would probably, Bitcoin and the rest of the cryptocurrency world in general. But I wouldn't say it's impossible. It just,
it's going to take
maybe that would be like, maybe that would be like a 5 to 10 year thing, out sort of prediction. Or possibility. But yeah, exactly. There has to be a lot more adoption, like that network effect. Like what can we plug punks into? Like how can we use them?
For sure.
How can we make them present and part of like our identities and, our branding and what will they do in the future? And I think that's the big question everyone is wondering, because it's more than just art. It's more than just a collectible. It's like, something you can represent out on the web 3.0 and whatever comes next, to be, yourself and represent you and, more than a Rolex.
The metaverse, especially everything happening in the metaverse right now. I think they're going to be it's like everyone's going to want a punk. You have Somnium Space, you have Decentraland and all of these metaverses, and, they're starting to boom right now. And I'm sure punks are going to have a huge influence on that.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. One of the big things that I think needs to happen to help that along is kind of getting the Twitter blue check mark sort of thing for like whatever NFT that you're kind of representing is verified, that you're a verified owner. Like on my Twitter, I've got like, a SIG verification link, but like it's not very intuitive to click on it, go look at it, compare things. Like there just kind of needs to be some automation there, I think, to help that recognition along.
For sure. And are you still bullish on Ethereum long term, or do you see another competitor coming along and destroying it?
Oh, that's a big question.
That's a big question, man. But everyone has an opinion.
I'm also curious. Yeah.
And please don't say Cardano.
No. I mean, Cardano is cool and all, but I always kind of understood it to be more of like an academic platform. But yeah, no, I am still bullish on Ethereum. The crypto space in general, but Ethereum has a lot of talent behind what they're building, what's being built with it. They have a good lead, and they have the network effect going for them. They're being built into so many things, and there's so much adoption that I think it'd be very, very difficult to knock them down.
What about any altcoins? Any thoughts on those, or pure Ethereum?
I mean, yeah, I haven't really put a whole lot of effort into following a lot of the more recent altcoins. I mean, there's some interesting stuff out there. Like, I don't know. I was looking into Filecoin, but I haven't gotten any. They've also had some issues recently. I mean, like I mentioned in a previous discussion, like, you know, earlier on, I thought ICX looked kind of cool, but like, you know, because they had like a lot of adoption from the South Korean government.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't really know how that's moving along either, you know, like, so.
So you're going to have so many successes. You're going to have all these alts, like you're going to have Solana, you're going to have Cosmos, you're going to have Polkadot. I'm sure they're all going to be successful, but I think all roads are going to lead to Ethereum. And that's, you know, they're all going to coexist really well. And Ethereum is going to be the main hub, and you're going to have all these smaller ones that are going to do just as well, just they're not going to be as big as Ethereum, in my opinion. That's just my
certainly no
personal
time
opinion.
soon. That's kind of my feeling too. At least no time soon.
Exactly. And, you know, who
Unless
knows?
there's
It might
some sort of-
change, but for now, it looks like Ethereum is, you know, Ethereum is what Ethereum is.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see what happens. That's for sure.
Yeah. Moxley, I really appreciated you coming on the podcast. And
Yeah.
amazing, man. It's amazing to talk to someone who had 7 alien punks.
Yeah, thanks for taking the
Yeah,
time
my
for
pleasure.
sure. Really appreciate it.
All right, have a good
absolutely.
night.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you guys take care.
Take care. Bye.
Goodbye.